Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everybody. This is a webinar that I know many of you have been asking for. As a matter of fact, I just did a webinar a couple weeks back, and I'm guessing some of you were probably there because I know you specifically asked for this to be done. And the reason this is being all put together today is, well, Microsoft has really mixed things up now. This is not the first time they've done it, but they've once again completely revamped everything. And so when that happens, people have a lot of questions, and I'm going to do my best to try to make sure that those questions get answered. Hopefully I'll be able to answer the majority of them with my presentation, and if there's anything else lingering out there, as Lisa mentioned, feel free to ask away and I will do my best to answer. And if I don't know the answer, I will certainly take it back to Microsoft Learning on your behalf and get an answer for you. So real quick, for any of you who have not ever been in a webinar with me before or taken any of my classes, just to kind of give you a very quick who am I, and who's this guy who's telling me all this stuff. Well, I'm just a computer geek who has worked in technology for, let's just say, over 20 years. I stopped counting at 20, so it's somewhere in the low 20s. More specifically, I've been certified in instructing IT professionals for 13 of those years, and pretty soon I think I'm going to be getting close to an anniversary where I can change that to 14, so I'm excited about that. But I want you to notice, and I don't want you to notice this for bragging reasons, but I want you to notice that I got a bunch of letters that go along with my name. Most recently, as Lisa mentioned, MVP, which I'm really excited about. I was also not only an MCT, but I was now made MCT Ambassador. If any of you were at Tech Ed, you might have seen me working there. And then you'll see there's a whole bunch of other letters, and the reason I put them up there is because I want you to know that if I'm going to talk to you about certification, it's not just something that I read about and I want to convey to you. It's something that I live by. Okay, this is something that I have participated in throughout my career. Outside of that, those of you who know me know that I'm the kind of guy who likes to help people out. So when I'm not doing this professionally, I like to help out kids who are struggling with math, because it's something I'm also very good at. And my title right now is I happen to be I work for Train Signal. I don't know if you've ever heard of that company. It's only the company putting on the webinar, right? And I am the lead Windows Server instructor. So anything that has to do with Microsoft and Windows Server, I'm in some way, shape, or form affiliated with it. And what that means, for any of you that are wondering, is yes, right now I am working on all the new Windows Server 2012 stuff. Okay, so don't ask me questions about it because it's a product that's not even released yet. So I don't have dates or anything like that because I know people are going to want to know. But all I will tell you is it is being worked on, and I'm very involved. So you can always ping me through other channels if you have questions. All right, now real quick, yes, that ugly mug on the screen there, that's me. And again, I'm just kind of showing you, this is what I've managed to achieve. And actually, I have a newer wall that's slightly more full than this. This is the only picture I had available. And the reason I want to show you this again is not for bragging reasons. The reason is because, and if any of you were in the certification webinar with me back in, I think it was November, you heard me go through this personal story once before, and don't hang up, don't leave the webinar. I'm going to go through this very quickly, but I think it's really important to truly understand what certification is all about in order to really understand what it's going to mean to you. Okay, and one of my heroes, who actually works at Microsoft, I read his certification story, and it really inspired me. Even after all these years, it re-inspired me. So I wanted to see where you might be able to relate with any of my story here. So my story goes all the way back to 1983 when I got my first personal computer. It was an Apple IIe. That's right, I said Apple, not Microsoft. Okay, that was the first computer I had. And actually, I have not that same Apple IIe, but a coworker of mine actually was kind enough. He knew somebody who was giving away some Apple IIes, and he knew that was my original computer, and so he got one for me. So I have one back on my desk now, and it's fun going back and looking at what technology used to be. From there, I got my first job in a technology-related company in 1989. But if you take a look, for 9 years, from 1989 to 1998, I was the unofficial IT guy, meaning I wasn't actually officially working in an IT capacity. Okay, I was just a guy who was doing different things, but happened to know a lot about computers. And so, what did that mean? It meant when people got stuck or something wasn't working, because maybe I was closer than calling help desk or whatever the IT, the official IT approach was for that company, they would just come get me. So after 9 years of that, in June of 1998, I finally made a decision. You know what? I'm pretty much doing the work. Why don't I make this my actual official career? So if any of you who are listening are thinking, maybe I'm too old to be getting involved with this, or maybe, I should have done this, many years ago, I can tell you that it's not too late. Okay, I mean, I put in 9 years in the professional world, even working with computer-related companies and technology-related companies, and but it wasn't too late. Okay, because 9 years in, I made this decision, and you'll notice that's June of 1998, whereas we're now in what are we in now? It's still July, I think. It's not August yet, so we're in July of 2012, and I'm still going strong. August 1998 is when I actually began the MCSE certification track. I actually signed up at a school to take some classes and get my MCSE. Only 2 months later, in October, I started teaching a course called Networking Essentials, which was one of the Microsoft exams towards the MCSE. And a year later, okay, for a year, I was the networking guy. Okay, I taught exclusively Networking Essentials. I did also teach some CompTIA stuff like A+ and Network+. But a year later, I officially became a Microsoft certified trainer, and I went on to teach all sorts of different Microsoft technologies. And you'll notice there's this huge gap, because I'm not going to go through my whole life story. I'm just going to tell you, hey, here we are today, 33 exams, 26 certifications later. I'm a current 2012 MCT and still learning. Okay, this is an ever ongoing journey. Okay, and I want you to look at it that way. Okay, I want you to look at this as an ongoing journey. This is not a late night infomercial where you just jump in and say, oh, well, if I do this one thing, I'll be rich. Okay, this is not a get rich quick, some kind of scheme. This is a career, and if you're going to be part of any career, it's an ongoing thing. Okay, so I really want you looking at it that way. Now, since you know a little bit about me, and if you've ever been to my webinars, you know that I want to know a little bit about you. So I'm going to go ahead and pop, this is just a slide you're looking at right now. I'm going to put the real poll on the screen, and I want to know where my audience is from. All right, so now you should be able to go ahead and click on your answers. And as usual, I will apologize to those who are in South America, Africa, or Antarctica, because I'm not trying to merge you all together and say you're one group. I only have 5 choices that I can put here. So anyway, so go ahead and just take a quick moment here to answer where you're from. And it looks like most of you have, so just a few more moments. And I'm going to close the poll and we'll take a look. All right, so let's close the poll. Let's take a look at our answers. All right, so it looks like 80% of you are in North America, which is where I am as well. So most of everything that I'll talk about should completely 100% relate to those of you who are here in North America. For the rest of you, I notice there's 10%. It's pretty spread out, 10% in Europe, 4% Asia, 1% in Australia, and 5% from the other 3 continents. Everything I'm saying will still relate to you guys. If I happen to mention anything when it comes to dollar amounts or anything like that, there are some slight differences there as far as the logistics. But everything else as far as certification goes should be exactly the same. Let me go ahead and hide this poll. And I have another poll for you. I want to know if any of you have ever taken an IT certification exam. Okay, so either yes, you've taken it with a Microsoft exam, or maybe some other vendor, CompTIA or Cisco or somebody else, or if you have not taken one at all. So go ahead and pop in and answer real fast. All right, so it looks like just about everybody's voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. And let's take a look. All right, so this is a very mixed crowd, actually. Okay, I noticed that a little over half of you have taken a Microsoft certification exam, so good for you. That's great. About a quarter of you have taken some other vendor certification exam, and then another quarter of you, and I'm looking at the numbers, looks like they don't add up to 100. But anyway, said no, you have not taken any certification exam. So especially for the quarter of you who have not taken any certification exam, hopefully you'll feel a little more inspired after today. All right, so let's get back to this here. What are we going to talk about today? Well, I am going to take you through a very quick history of Microsoft certification. And again, for those of you who were in my certification webinar back in November, you may have seen this before. I'm going to do this fairly quickly, but I have to tell you, it's really important. And I don't mean just because I personally feel, well, it's kind of important to know the history of things. No, I'm telling you, in order to truly understand what they've done with today's certifications, you have to know where we used to be. You have to know how things used to work, because you're going to see certain pieces of former certification programs incorporated in today's certification program. And that's the next thing that it's really where we're going to spend the majority of our time today, which is how Microsoft certification works today. How does it work right now? What is this whole, reinvented or new MCSE that everybody's talking about? And then we'll talk briefly, before we wrap things up, about the future of certification and where things are heading. So let's go through the history. Okay, in the beginning, back in 1992, which, by the way, if you do your math, you may have seen different advertisements about how Microsoft Learning has talked about 20-year anniversary, 20 years of certification. Well, that's because this all started in 1992. They began the original Microsoft Certified Professional program. And the idea behind this program was to, and I know I have here, create a rigorous set of online exams to measure expertise and all that. Here's the kind of the sum up of why they started this whole thing. Back in the early 90s, we had a lot of people who were working as IT professionals. They were working in technology, but they had no valid way to really show an employer or a prospective employer what their skills were. I mean, yeah, they had a resume and they could show jobs that they've done, maybe certain projects they've worked on, but a lot of these people, because there was such high demand, a lot of them came straight out of high school. And they didn't go to college, and they didn't have a degree to go ahead and be able to promote themselves with. So this was a way to use certification. And by the way, these certification exams were designed to be what's called experience-based exams. They weren't designed with the intent that you would go take a class or read a book and then go pass a test. The idea was you are working in the field, you have experience, you know how this stuff works, so let's go ahead and give you something to validate yourself with. That is why this program was started. That's how it was started, and that has been maintained throughout. Okay, that still holds true today. Now, originally, here are some names from the past, if you're familiar with them. We had Windows 3.1, LAN Manager, and SQL Server. Those were the original Microsoft professional technologies that you could test on. Now, from there, we moved into the world of Windows NT. Okay, we had different versions of NT. We had NT 3.5.1, NT 4.0. We had a number of different versions of NT. So I just have it listed here as pre-Windows 2000. And we still had our MCP, but they now had created what was called the MCSE, which stood for Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. And I want to point out the name, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, because, again, we're eventually going to get to MCSE all over again when we get to today, but the words are different. The letters are the same, but the words are different. In order to get your MCSE, you had to pass 6 tests. Okay, there were 6 very difficult exams you had to go through, and these are the ones that I went through back in the 90s when I got into this. And the validity period, okay, this is significant, is that your MCSE was good through 2 versions of the related product. So what that meant was, if you got, just hypothetically here, if you got an MCSE in Windows NT 351, if those were the exams that you took, you didn't have an MCSE NT 351. You were just called an MCSE. And it was good through not just Windows NT 4.0, which was the next version, but then through, we used to call it NT 5.0, and eventually became Windows 2000. So it was once Windows 2000 came out, that's when you were going to have to recertify, because you were now 2 generations out, if you wanted to keep your MCSE. Yeah, that's how they originally did it. Now, at the tail end of the pre-Windows 2000 era, they did add specialization with what was called Plus Internet, or Plus I, because in the late 90s, the Internet was really booming, and so they wanted to make that specialization if that was the area in which you were an expert. Now, moving into Windows 2000, things changed. In Windows 2000, we still had the MCP and the MCSE. Okay, that was exactly the same. Nothing changed there. And there were 7 tests now instead of 6. And yes, there was an upgrade test available. But here's the deal. Certification was valid only until the release of the next related product. The whole 2 generations out thing went away. And this had everybody just going crazy. Okay, people were not happy with Microsoft, because there were a lot of people who got their MCSE on Windows NT 4 like right before Windows 2000 came out. Now Windows 2000 came out, and Microsoft says, well, now you have to do it all over again, or you're going to lose your MCSE. So that policy was quickly changed. And when I say quickly, it took them close to a year to change it, but they did change it. And what they decided to do was they made a decision that said, once you're an MCSE, you're an MCSE for life. But you had a product tied to it. So if you were to look at my transcript will tell you that I'm an MCSE in Windows NT 4.0. And then it will also say that I'm an MCSE in Windows 2000. So those are 2 separate MCSEs. That's also why, if you were paying very close attention back on my introduction slide, you'll notice that it said that I'm an MCSE times 3. And that's because I have 3 different MCSEs, NT 4.0, Windows 2000, and Windows Server 2003. Okay, it became a product-related certification. Now, I'm going to readdress that a little bit later on, but I want to move through this. Security and messaging specializations were also added because those became specialties, along with the internet specialization that we talked about previously, that were in high demand. Another thing that happened in the Windows 2000 era, and this did not happen right away, it happened shortly before Windows Server 2003 came out. So I think it was in the year 2002 this happened. The MCSA, Microsoft Certified Systems Administrator, was introduced. And the reason why is because they felt that there was too big of a gap between the basic MCP and the full-blown MCSE. So the MCSA was kind of a middle-of-the-road certification. It took 4 exams to get your MCSA, but, and many people argued this, it was not included in the MCSE track. Meaning, the example I can give you is I was an MCSE in Windows 2000 when this happened, but I was not automatically made to be an MCSA. There was a completely separate exam I had to take to make MCSA. That bothered some people. So, if we move along into Windows Server 2003, you'll notice it's exactly the same as what we had for Windows 2000. You still have MCP. You still have MCSE. It still took 7 tests. There's still an upgrade available. There's still the MCSA. It's still 4 tests. There's an upgrade from the previous one. But notice this time it was included in the MCSE track. It was realized that MCSA was truly middle ground, not a sidestep, but middle ground, and something you would take on the way to becoming an MCSE. The only other thing I will talk to you about when it comes to MCSA is noticing what the letters stand for. It's Microsoft Certified Systems Administrator, because again, the words have changed with the new MCSA, which we'll look at in a few moments. The only other side note here is that security and messaging specializations were still available. The point is, things did not change very much with Windows 2000 to Windows Server 2003. But then we got to Windows Server 2008, and everything changed. I mean, look at this. There's nothing here that matches what we previously had. Microsoft was getting to the point of realizing that the MCSA and the MCSE, they were basically too generic of a title for what the new IT marketplace was looking for. There's way too many areas of technology to just generically have these MCSA and MCSEs. And they did this while talking to different HR managers and things like that. And they found out that by making people a Microsoft certified technology specialist in a specific technology, or a Microsoft certified IT professional in a certain area or specialization, that it would be easier for the HR managers to truly understand and truly validate what somebody who is coming in to apply for a job was capable of doing. So the MCTS, many people looked at it as kind of taking the place of the MCP. Okay, so in other words, it was just one test on one specific technology, and the MCITP took the place of the MCSA and the MCSE in the sense that you'll see that an MCITP as a server administrator was 3 exams, and as an enterprise administrator was 5 exams. Okay, so everything was completely revamped. And you didn't have specializations anymore. And the reason you didn't have specializations is because everything was a specialization. Every certification was tied specifically to some technology. But here's the thing. It never really took. Even to this day, people still ask me, how do I get my MCSE in Windows Server 2008? Because they just didn't realize. I mean, the letters MCSA and more specifically MCSE became kind of a brand of its own. Now, I will also tell you that it is my understanding that the reason that the MCSE went away, besides the need for these specializations with the HR managers, is that in certain countries there are very strict rules or laws regarding the use of the term engineer. There are requirements. There are schooling requirements and experience requirements if you're going to call yourself an engineer. So the MCSE, standing for Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, was causing a problem. But unfortunately, like I said, MCSE, those letters were a brand. I mean, from 1990, I don't want to say 92 because I don't believe there was an MCSE from day one, but in the early to mid 90s, all the way up to 2008, so for over a decade, people were now used to this MCSE, MCSE, MCSE. And that's what brings us to what they've done today. Now, before we get into, specifically into today, I was going to take a moment here and see if anybody had any questions, but I can see that there aren't any, which is good. Don't feel like you have to throw a question in because I'm going to get to talking all about today's certifications. So if you have a question about old certifications, go ahead and throw it up. I'll try to get it real fast. Otherwise, if it's about today's certifications, we're going to get into that right now. Now, I'll keep an eye on the Q&A, but I want to go ahead and talk to you. I want to get a couple more polls, find out where your interest is. So I want to know what area of IT you are interested in. Now, this is actually 5 areas that it used to be divided into. So I'm going to use these same 5 areas. I just want to see where you guys are mostly interested, because you'll notice that everything I've talked about up to this point really had to do with an infrastructure type arena. If you're into database administration, you know that there used to be an MCDBA, which I did not address at all. If you're a developer, there was the MCSD, which I did not address at all. Okay, and then on the application side and business management side, we also had some other certifications, mouse for like Office, things like that. I didn't address any of those, but I want to see where you guys are at. Maybe I should have done this earlier on. So I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Looks like most of you have voted. And let's take a look. Okay, good. It looks like the majority of you, 85% of you, are also interested in the infrastructure arena. And that's great, because most of what I'm going to talk about in today's world is going to be infrastructure based. And for the other, what would that be, 15%, 7% database administration, 2% developer, 3% application, 4% business management. For the rest of you, don't go away, because the stuff I'm going to tell you, although it's still, I'm going to talk infrastructure because that's what I know, and I want to talk to you about what I know as an expert. It still relates, okay? It's still very similar. You might need to do just a little bit of research to see what a specific certification is that's been created for you. But I can tell you specifically the DBAs and the developers, I am going to cover your stuff just a little bit here as well. But most of what I'm going to do is infrastructure based, and again, that's just because that's what I'm an expert in. All right, so I do have one more poll for you. And I'm just curious, I asked you earlier, how many of you have taken a certification exam? From the Microsoft perspective, okay, so only answer with regards to Microsoft certifications. I'm curious, how many of you are an MCP? And you can only answer one, by the way. So I already know that if you're an MCSA, you're also an MCP, but go ahead and answer whatever your highest certification is. I want to know how many MCPs are out there, how many MCSAs and or E's are out there. And by the way, I want to know about the old MCSA and E, not the new one. How many MCTSs versus ITPs, which, you know what, I'm noticing that it looks like my poll didn't get updated. I made a change to it. So I had MCTS and MCITP together, and then I had other, and then I had none. So if you don't have any, just go ahead and put it, just don't answer. Others, if you have any of the others like MCDBA or things like that. All right, so I'll give you just a moment here to finish answering, because I see that only 2/3 of the people have voted, but again, if you don't have any of these, then just don't answer. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the polling. It looks like no one else is voting anymore. Let's see what we got. All right, there's a nice mixture in here. 22% of you are an MCP. Congratulations. 27% made MCSA and or MCSE. Very good. 9% MCTS and 14% MCITP. Again, congratulations. And 28% have some other Microsoft certification. Awesome. Here's the deal. I want you guys to notice something. I want you guys to notice that basically half, 49% of you, fall into that MCP, MCSA, MCSE. Half. Even though those certifications have been, essentially non-existent. I mean, yeah, they're still there. You can still grab hold of them. But they haven't been the primary certification for quite a while now, 4 or 5 years. And notice that only 23%, if my math is correct, are an MCTS or an MCITP, and that has been the primary certification for the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, so that's really kind of the point behind this poll, is to show you this is why Microsoft had to make another drastic change. Okay, let me go ahead and hide that. Let's jump back into this. Now, real quick, before we get into this new MCSE, I just want to look and see. I see a few questions coming in. It looks like most of them are questions that look like they may be answered with the upcoming certifications. So I'm going to hold off on these. Hopefully I will end up answering some of these as part of my presentation. But don't worry, I am going to come back and do more Q&A in a little bit, so I'll make sure to get all these questions answered for you. So when it comes to the new MCSE, here's what I have for you. This is not necessarily everything, and even if it's everything for the moment, Microsoft is releasing more and more of these certifications, on a very regular basis. And as all these new technologies come out over the next few months, you're going to see certifications tied with them. And in the upcoming years, as you see newer technologies coming out, you're going to see certifications coming with them. But so here's a list of them. We have MCSE in the private cloud. We have one called server infrastructure, one called desktop infrastructure, data platform, business intelligence, and then we have a couple of MCSDs, okay, and this is for you developers, where we have the Windows Metro style apps broken down into either HTML5 or C#. Now I have a link. You can't click on it, but you can write it down. We also do have this being recorded in case you don't get it written down before I go off of this screen. And I can also tell you that even beyond that, if you just remember Microsoft.com/learning, which I'm going to put up on the screen again at the end of this presentation, just remember Microsoft.com/learning. From there, there's another link right on that page for certification. It'll get you right into the certification overview. This is where all of the information I'm about to share with you is coming from. Okay, so everything that I am going to go over with you, this is not, other than a few opinions that I'm going to throw in, everything you're going to see, I'm giving you straight from Microsoft. All right, so MCSE Private Cloud. This was the very first MCSE that they released when we got to the new MCSE. Oh, and you know what? There is one thing I should mention. It's not. It is on the screen. I probably should have made it a little bit more bold. I wanted to start off by pointing out what the MCSE, what the letters now stand for. And they stand for Microsoft Certified Solutions Expert. There's a couple of pieces of significance. There are a couple pieces of significance to that title. Number one, it's no longer an engineer. Okay, so if any of you are in a country where the term engineer is a problem, it won't be a problem for you here because, well, they don't have the word engineer anymore. The second thing I want to point out is the words solutions expert. That's exactly what it is. If you're going to be an MCSE, you are an expert in some type of general IT solution. Okay, so they kind of held on to some of those specializations. The concept of the MCITP was that, we still can't generalize just into 2 or 3 arenas. We have to break it out into all sorts of different specializations. And that's what this is. It's a specific area that you know how to provide a solution. The MCSA, which is also in a box on the left side of the screen, stands for Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate. Okay, so again, the words have changed. You're a Solutions Associate. And I'm going to explain in a little more detail what we mean by that. It means that you're able to provide a solution in a specific technology. So, that said, let's look at this private cloud. In order to be an MCSE in the private cloud, okay, in that specialization, you have to start off by being an MCSA in Windows Server 2008. And we're going to look at how that's accomplished in just a moment, but you have to be an MCSA in Windows Server 2008. And then there are 2 more solutions-based exams, 2 more expert-based exams. They're numbered 247 and 246, which are configuring and deploying a private cloud with System Center 2012 and monitoring and operating a private cloud with System Center 2012. In other words, you have to take a couple of System Center 2012 exams to be able to say that you are a solutions expert in Windows, excuse me, I almost said Windows Server. It's going to be in the private cloud, okay, because that's where all the private cloud solutions are. But what about the MCSA portion of it? Oh, real fast before I get to the MCSA, there is, I don't know if you can read it, there is one little note here that if you've taken the 70-659 exam, which was an exam on virtualization, primarily working with the virtual machine manager, then you can until January 31st, 2013, you can use that in place of 247. But now I want to talk to you about that MCSA. In order to become an MCSA in Windows Server 2008, you have to take 3 exams, 640, 642, and 646. If those look familiar to anybody, okay, if those look familiar to anybody, that's because they should. If you've gone for the MCITP in Windows Server 2008, matter of fact, if you've achieved MCITP in Windows Server 2008, you already have the MCSA in Windows Server 2008. They've grandfathered you in. If I pull up my transcript, I'll show you, I could show you that I am an MCSA, and I didn't have to take a test. Why didn't I have to take a test? Well, because I already took these 3 tests. I took these 3 tests to get an MCITP Server Administrator. Now, if any of you are wondering, you may say to yourself, well, wait a minute, I'm an MCITP Enterprise Administrator, which meant I had to take the 640, and I had to take the 642, but I didn't take the 646. That was not part of that track. That's okay. Microsoft decided to grandfather you in as well. You don't have to go back and take that exam. Okay, but these are the 3 exams that you need to become an MCSA in Windows Server 2008, which then means that it would be a total of 5 exams to become an MCSE private cloud, right? You have to take the 3 exams for MCSA plus the 2 more. All right, let's move into another one. Now, this is the one that seems to have everyone's attention right now. In other words, for all those people who were part of the original MCSE, and for all of you who were MCITP Server Administrator and or Enterprise Administrator, this is the certification that most closely relates to what you've been doing. Okay, private cloud is only if you were on the virtualization side. Server infrastructure, how do we do this? Well, you have to first of all become an MCSA, not in Windows Server 2008, but you have to do it in Windows Server 2012. All right, so that's important. You're going to have to become an MCSA in Windows Server 2012, and I will show you how to do that in just a moment. After you get your MCSA in Windows Server 2012, you have 2 more expert-based exams, the 413, which is designing and implementing a server infrastructure, and 414, implementing an advanced server infrastructure. Then you become an MCSE in server infrastructure. Now, the MCSA part, this is what a lot of people are asking about. In order to become an MCSA in Windows Server 2012, there are 3 exams to take. You have to take the 410, 411, and 412. These 3 exams will tell Microsoft, and then with your certification, tell employers that you know Windows Server 2012. So this will help you to get jobs where you will be administering Windows Server 2012. Now you might be asking, wait a minute, I already have certifications. Is there an upgrade path? And there is. If you already have your MCSA in Windows Server 2008, or you are an MCITP, and you'll notice there's a whole list of things there. Typically, it's the Enterprise Administrator, or they don't have it listed, the Server Administrator, but obviously the Server Administrator would also count, because if you were that, you'd also be Windows Server 2008 MCSA. So if you've already done the previous version, if you're already certified in Windows Server 2008, then you only have to take 1 exam, and it's the 417 exam. And basically what the 417 exam is, it's the 410, 411, and 412. It's all 3 exams put together into one, and then eliminate the stuff that would be redundant to what you already proved back in Windows Server 2008. So basically the questions are going to be only about the new stuff in Windows Server 2012. Stuff that's pertinent in today's world and maybe wasn't in the Windows Server 2008 world. So in order to become an MCSE server infrastructure, you need to take the 3 exams or the 1 upgrade if you are previously certified, and then 2 more exams, 413, 414, and you become an MCSE server infrastructure. So 5 exams, or maybe only 3 exams if you are already certified. Now you may have noticed that I've been flipping past another slide here back and forth, and there's one that's very similar to the server infrastructure, and that's called desktop infrastructure. And in order to become an MCSE desktop infrastructure, you have to first be an MCSA in Windows Server 2012. Same thing. Okay, it's no different. It's the exact same 3 exams or 1 upgrade exam. Then from there are 2 expert level exams, the 415 and 416, which are implementing a desktop infrastructure and implementing desktop application environments. And if you put that all together, then you get to say that you are an expert in providing desktop infrastructure solutions. Now, let me move through the rest of these so we can kind of get back to the whole big picture concept and answer a lot of your questions. There are also MCSEs out there. There's one here for data platform, which you'll notice you have to be an MCSA on SQL Server 2012. And then there's a couple of expert level exams. So for any of you who maybe were an MCDBA or you're interested in the database environment, this could be for you. To get your MCSA in SQL Server 2012, you have to take 3 exams, just like with all the other MCSAs, 461, 62, and 63. If you're already an MCTS on any SQL Server 2008 product, then there's sort of an upgrade path. I get a little bit of a kick out of this because instead of 3 exams, you get narrowed down to 2 exams. So that's 1 exam you get to save. Not bad. But again, you also qualify to take the 2 if you're simply an MCTS in SQL Server 2008. There's also an MCSE in Business Intelligence, which is part of being an MCSA in SQL Server 2012. And then there's a couple of expert level exams, which are, again, in the same arena, but now on the BI side of SQL instead of the data platform side. Now, for the MCSD, for the developers in the room, there is an MCSD called Windows Style Metro Apps, but it's actually called MCSD Windows Style or Windows Metro Style Apps using HTML5 or using C#, depending on which side of the development, programmer side of things that you're on. Can you guys tell that yeah, I know you can't answer me, but you can raise your hand. I'm telling you, I can see all of you. Can you tell that I'm an infrastructure guy? Because when it comes to the data platform and the BI and now the MCSD, now I'm kind of just reading it to you from the website because this is not my area of specialty. But I wanted you guys to have a chance to see this here. Is you have 3 exams to becoming an MCSD and 3 different exams for MCSD, whether you're doing HTML5 or C#. Okay. Now, real quick, let's talk about some of the specifics if you want to go out there and get certified. Okay, and then I'm going to actually come back and talk to you a little bit more about some of the whys and the hows with this new MCSA and MCSE. First of all, Test Center. All testing is currently still being done through Prometric. Okay, so you have to go to a Prometric Testing Center. You go to prometric.com to register for your exams. Okay, that's who actually facilitates these exams. As far as the cost, it is different in every country. So this is where I was saying I'm only familiar with North America, and I know that here in North America, the exams, if you're paying full price, if there's no discounts going on, and very often there are, but if there are no discounts, the cost for each exam is $150. The passing score for these exams. This is also something that has changed over the years. They have tried many different strategies, and the one that they use today is one that they've used for quite a while now. I'd actually have to go back and look and see how many years they've worked with this. I think it even precedes the MCTS and the MCITP, so it's been more than 4 or 5 years since the passing score is set to a flat 700. Okay, so the passing score is a 700, but it's not 700 out of 1,000. In other words, it's not necessarily on a scale of 0 to 1,000. They will adjust the scale so that it's not necessarily 70%. 700 could represent 50%, or 700 might represent 80%. Okay, we don't know. That's only for Microsoft to know, and this is done this way to maintain the integrity of the exams. The reason that they have a passing score at all is because what they originally did was they went to just a straight pass-fail. In other words, they wouldn't tell you your score. They would just tell you if you did good enough to pass or not. But the problem is no one really had anything to gauge that against. So if you failed, especially if you failed, there's a big difference between if you get a 690 and you're thinking, oh man, I could have got one more question right and I probably would have passed, or if you get a 200 and you're thinking, oh man, did I tank that exam? Okay, so that's why they put a relative score back into play, so that you could have something to gauge yourself against. Now, on the flip side of that, I will tell you that if you pass, I don't care if you get a 700 or an 800 or a 900 or 1,000. If you get 700 or better, you passed, and you are equal with everybody else. The reason Microsoft went to a pass-fail in the first place, one of the reasons anyway, was that they didn't want people advertising that they were superior based upon their score. Different people are going to get different question pools. Your score does not necessarily reflect that you are better or worse than somebody else. If you pass, then you've passed. You have validated that you've got the skills that are needed to advertise yourself as being an associate or an expert in a certain arena. I will also tell you that in all my years, even as a trainer, I have yet to have a single employer ever ask me the score that I got on an exam. I mean, we may have talked about it just, I'll come, if I go take a test and I come back and go, hey, I passed, they might go, hey, what'd you get? But they're not asking me for the purposes of like, do you get to keep working here? Or can we trust you to do your job? It's just small talk. So don't worry about your score. You got to get a 700. That's all you have to know that you're aiming for. As far as the retake policy, if you fail, that's okay. I mean, nobody likes to fail. I have failed an exam. It wasn't fun. It didn't feel good. But the reality is all you have to do is go take it again. And the retake policy is that any Microsoft exam that you fail, you can turn right back around and take it again a second time. There is no wait period. I have literally failed or seen people, because I haven't done this myself, I have seen people who have failed an exam but came so close that they felt like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just re-register and go right back in and take it again. Now, some places, there's a lot of places where you can't get back in until the next day. But I do know in the past, I've heard of people who even went back the same day and took it again. But here's the thing. If you fail a second time, then there is a 2-week wait period. In other words, Microsoft saying, hey, look, you failed twice. Go back and study. You got to wait 2 weeks before you can come back and take it again. And although I know I keep having to go look this up, there is also, I usually don't worry about this because this is pretty extreme. I do believe that you're also only allowed to take it, I want to say 5 times within a calendar year. Okay, so I think within a year's time you can only take it 5 times. And then you'd have to wait till you crossed over and it's been a year since the first time you took it. But we're not even going to worry about that because none of you are going to fail a test 5 times. Now, the validity period. This is a very important one. This is the one I really was looking forward to getting back to. You remember way back in the 90s, I mentioned how the validity period was good until 2 generations out. And then I said that that validity period changed to where it was only good for till the next product came out. And then it became a validity period where it was good for life, but it had a product tied to it. So to this day, I can still claim to be an MCSE in Windows NT 4.0. I don't know if there's anyone out there who cares. I don't know if there's anybody who would, hire me because I said that. Maybe there is. There might be some office who's still using that old technology, but I still can do that. I own that for life. Well, what they've done, and this is something that's very important and at the same time has been very confusing for a lot of people, is the current validity period. And I'll tell you, there's one area I'm still a little fuzzy on, and I haven't gotten a straight answer from Microsoft Learning yet. And I'm not talking about, they're not double talking me. I think they're still doing a little figuring. But there's one part that is very solid that I can share with you. The MCSA, because it is tied to a specific technology, I do believe that the intent is that you will be able to keep it for life, just as I keep my NT 4.0 MCSE. But although you can keep it for life, it's going to be listed as retired or expired. I don't know what terminology specifically is going to be used. Okay, so it'll show as basically once, if you're an MCSA on Windows Server 2008, there's going to be some point in the future that Windows Server 2008 will be considered to be an outdated technology. Microsoft will drop support for that technology. And at that point, your certification, although you may still have it, it's going to, it's going to be old and outdated as well. Whereas the MCSE, this is very significant, the MCSE is not tied to a specific technology. Okay, the MCSE is tied to a solution. Okay, being an expert in an overall solution that might include multiple technologies. One example I can give you is that the private cloud MCSE uses Windows Server 2008 along with System Center 2012. So that MCSE, just like we had back in the days of NT, will need to be renewed. Okay, it's going to have to be updated at some point in the future when the technologies that you originally tested on are no longer current. So what that means is, and this is where I'm going to throw in my opinion, and then we're going to jump to some Q&A here, because I'm sure there's probably some questions. I think that they've taken the best of the old, meaning back in the pre-Windows 2000 stuff, merged it with the best of the new, some of the things that worked with the Windows 2000 and Windows Server 2003, along with even the Windows Server 2008, and created a great certification program. That's my opinion. Okay, now ask me in a year and I might think it sucks, but right now I think it is great what they've done. I think the idea here is you really have something that you can utilize to validate your skills in the IT arena. Now I'm noticing on the clock here that it's we only have a few minutes left. So I want to see what questions we might have hanging out there, see if I can answer some of these for you. Somebody asked here about upgrading the MCITP Enterprise to the new MCSE, where I did cover that. If you are an MCITP Enterprise Administrator, then there is the 417 upgrade exam that to the and again, I'm assuming you're saying new MCSE server infrastructure, but that 417 exam will get you an MCSA in Windows Server 2012, which is what you need for MCSE server or desktop infrastructure. With all the Microsoft certification changes over the year, especially because MCITP was only 2 or 3 years old, is it worth pursuing the new MCSE, or should we consider, hold on, it's off my screen, a more stable certification like the CCNA? No, you know what? I'm going to tell you what. I absolutely think it's worth it. This is not, some people think this is just Microsoft constantly changing the rules. And every time they do, people freak out and they say, you know what, I'm done with this. And you know what? Microsoft doesn't do things just for the fun of it. They do things because it makes sense. And they also admit when they've made mistakes. And the MCSE MCTS and the MCITP program was a mistake. The MCSE brand needed to come back, and that's why they brought those letters back, because it's a brand. But they had to change it from engineer, of course, so they made it a solutions expert. I'm not saying you shouldn't do CCNA. I think you should. I think that's also a great certification. These Cisco certifications are, I mean, heck, don't stop at CCNA. Go all the way for CCIE. Okay, it's a great lineup of certifications. But no, I don't think that that's a reason to move away from Microsoft certifications. Another question was, wasn't the theory partly that MCSA 2003 was for admins and MCSE was more for planning, not the day-to-day admins, but architects? Yeah, that's exactly. And by the way, I apologize. That question was, I think, asked back when I asked were there questions about the old certifications, and I didn't see it. Yeah, that's exactly what it pretty much was. MCSA was for the day-to-day administrators. Enterprise was more for the architects. That's absolutely correct. And that's still pretty much what we're at today with the new MCSA and the new MCSE. All right, let's see here. Can I have the timetable of these programs? I'm not sure what you mean by timetable. I mean, if you mean when these tests will be released, because it is true that many of these tests I've thrown out there today, they're not quite out yet. I don't have an absolute set timetable, if that's what you're asking. What I've been told is that all of these tests will go beta throughout the summer, and I believe they are expected to go live in the fourth quarter of 2012. That's the best I can give you right now. What do I need to upgrade to MCSE server infrastructure if I'm an MCSE and NT4? If you're an MCSE and NT4, you actually don't have an upgrade path available. You couldn't even take a series of upgrades. I've had people in the past who have asked me about an old certification, and I said, well, you can upgrade to this, and then upgrade to this, and upgrade to this. You can't even do that because the upgrade to Windows 2000 doesn't exist anymore. So you would pretty much need to just go ahead and do the full 5 exams if you're an MCSE and NT4. Any chance alternate testing sites might become available? I assume that you're asking instead of Prometric, and the only thing I can tell you is there is rumor, and it is strictly rumor, that we may be looking at expanding out into, back in the old days, we used to have 2 testing providers. We used to have Prometric, and then we also had a company called View. And through some different buyouts and things like that, different companies have bought different companies. I think I've heard a rumor that we may actually be back to 2 testing providers sometime in the future. But again, it's strictly rumor, and it may or may not happen. And I don't know if that helps you or not, because I don't know that there's, let's say, View testing centers near you if there's not Prometric. With SQL Server 2008, passing 1 exam gave you an MCTS. What do you get for passing your first SQL 2012 exam? You know what? Let me go back. I told you SQL is not my main thing here. It looks like 1 SQL exam isn't going to give you anything. You have to take I'm on the wrong screen there. There we go. I think you do have to take the 3 exams for MCSA. I don't think the 1 exam. I do know that the 1 exam, that's actually a question that's good for everybody to hear across the board. 1 certification exam makes you part of the MCP program, the Microsoft Certified Professional Program, which means that you're going to gain access to the private site. You're going to go ahead and have access to forums. You're going to have access to a transcript and things like that. But I don't believe it gives you an actual certification. I'm going to verify that because I've had a couple people who have asked me that of late, and I have not had a chance to get with the folks at Microsoft Learning to present that. I also think that question is being asked in the form of almost like a concern, like, hey, you know what? Throughout certification, since the first day it ever existed, 1 test got me something. It got me an MCP. And then even in Windows Server 2008, 1 test got me an MCTS. What does 1 test get me now? So that's a very valid question, and I am going to look into that and see if I can get an answer. And I will, I'll probably go ahead and keep an eye on the Train Signal blog and things like that, because I'll as things get updated, I try to post different articles of information out there for you. You can also reach out to me privately. I'll give you some contact information in just a little bit. Is there a cost for retaking exams? Yes, there is. You do have to pay. Sometimes they'll have promotions where you can have like a second chance for free. I don't believe there is one right now. I know there is a promotion that if you take like a Windows Server 2008 exam, I believe they give you the Windows Server 2012 exam for free. You'd have to go onto Microsoft's website or Prometric's website to see what that is, though. I believe that we have to be 640, 642, 646 completed by June 30 or July 31st, 2012, which is like a couple days from now. I do not believe that to be true, but Tom, I am certainly going to look and see if that is the case. I do not know that to be true at all, because the MCTS and MCITP stuff, I know I saw, depending on what we're looking at, some things were retiring in 2013 and some were actually retiring in 2014. So I think what you might have seen is July 31st, 2013. But I will have to go look that up. You can certainly find that out on Microsoft Learning's website. Can I upgrade from the MCSA 2003 messaging to the new MCSA, and what exams are those? There is no upgrade path that I'm aware of from 2003 to 2000, to the new stuff. But I will tell you that this is an example where you should be able to upgrade from 2003 to 2008 and then upgrade from there. Is it worth it? That's up to you. I mean, it's going to end up probably being right around the same amount of exams. It's just a matter of, some people want to do the upgrade all the way through so that they can, claim that they have certification in all the different generations. Is there a certain time between taking each test for MCSE? No, you know what? I know people who have literally gone and taken them all on the same day. Okay, there is no requirement between passing one test and taking another. I can give you an example of where I actually did that. Way back when, it was for my Microsoft Certified Desktop Systems Administrator. It was a 2-exam certification. I took one exam in the morning, felt so good about it, I went to the counter at the test center and said, I'd like to sign up for the second exam if you have availability. They did, so I went to lunch, came back, and took the second test. So there is no time that you are required to wait before moving on to another certification exam when you passed. Starting with no Microsoft certifications at all, what's the best path to get MCSE? Should I get MCSA 2008 and then take the extra test to upgrade to 2012? Being that I use 2008 daily and have a lot of familiarity, or should I just go right for 2012? Great question, Justin. A lot of people are asking that, and my opinion, especially since they did give you an upgrade path of just one exam, is I would start with the 2008. I would start with what you know. Start with what you've been working with. Start with what's going to be easier for you to get your feet wet in this. Take those 3 Windows Server 2008 exams, which will first of all get you a double bang for your buck. It'll get you the MCITP Server Administrator, although it was pointed out by Ben earlier that may be going away at the end of the month. I don't believe that to be true. I'm going to try to look that up right after we're done here. But even if you don't get that, you do get the MCSA in Windows Server 2008, and then it's just one upgrade exam to the Server 2012 once you start working with that product. All right, I'm going to answer a few more, and then I'm going to give you guys some contact info because I know some people need to get going, and then I will stick around and answer more questions. If I don't currently have any Microsoft certifications, where do I suggest starting now? Well, I basically just kind of answered that. It's kind of the same question, I think, in the sense that I recommend that you start with something that you're familiar with. So let's say you, like the other person who had been working with Windows Server 2008, boom, I definitely recommend that you go for those certifications first. If you're new to this altogether and you don't have experience with Windows Server 2008, then I may recommend that you start with Windows Server 2012. It's going to be released here in the next month or two, and you can go ahead and start learning on it and just start moving forward from there. For MCSE server infrastructure, can the 410 beta exam only be taken at Tech Ed? You know what, Glenn? I do know the beta exams are invite only. I know that if you missed it at Tech Ed, there was a window of opportunity to take it outside of Tech Ed, but I think you had to be at Tech Ed to still sign up for it. Outside of that, at this point, beta might almost be close to closed for that exam. I think they want to go live with that exam very soon. I've done the old MCSE. I want to do the new one. Is there an upgrade path? Again, if you are an MCSE, that means you're talking about Windows Server 2003 or older. If it's Windows Server 2003, you can do an upgrade path to 2008 and then to 2012. But otherwise, you're just going to have to start with Windows Server 2012. I've been MCSE and NT4, and then I upgraded to MCSE Windows 2000. After that, I gave up Microsoft certifications. Now I'm very much interested in Hyper-V and VMware for virtualization. If you are in my place, which of the new MCSE tracks would you pick? I would do private cloud. That's an easy one. I mean, server infrastructure obviously is a possibility as well because it's related to the type of certifications you did back in NT4 and Windows 2000. But private cloud is that's the one that really is related to virtualization that you're asking about. Have you taken any of the new exams? If so, is there much of a difference in the structure? I know they tried virtual lab tests. Here's what I can tell you. They're not doing those virtual labs, at least not right now. I can tell you, first of all, I should tell you, I have not taken any of the new exams. Okay, I have not taken any Windows Server 2012 exams. That's on the books for me to do in the very near future, or just haven't had time. What I want to tell you, though, is I have worked very closely with Microsoft Learning and have learned and have also talked to a lot of people coming out of the exams, and there's two things I want to tell you about these, and this is very, very important for you all to hear, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up and come back to questions. What I'm going to tell you is that, first of all, they've gone to a lot of different styles of questions. Okay, it's not just strict multiple choice. There's regular multiple choice. There is multiple answer multiple choice. But there's also things like where you click, like they'll have a screenshot up and you click in the right area of like where you would click to do something. There is putting certain steps of a process in order. Okay, there's a number of different types of questions. That's the first thing I want you to know. The second thing I want you to know is that what I'm hearing, and this is not from Microsoft Learning, this is feedback from people who took the beta exams at Tech Ed and came out and talked to me afterwards, is they said that they thought that the questions were much more relevant than they've been in the past. Okay, they've been extremely relevant. A lot of people will complain, and they have complained over the years, that tests are either too hard or they're too easy. And most people came out and said, no, you know what? If you know your stuff, if you've worked with the product and you really know what you're doing, then you're going to pass. The questions are relevant. And if you don't know what you're doing, well, it's not going to be like the old days where you could become a paper MCSE and get a paper certification. You have to know your stuff. Okay, so that's what I'm hearing about those tests. Now, real fast, I do know there's some more questions. I'm going to get to them. I just want to do a couple things. First of all, as far as the future, we didn't get time to spend on it. Here's the easy answer. Even though they've just made changes, these changes prove that Microsoft is always listening. And that's what I'm trying to express here, is they want your feedback. You decide the future of certifications. You being involved, me being involved, all of us being involved and communicating as often as possible with Microsoft is going to go ahead and get this done. Okay, that's what's going to get the future of certification done and done correctly. Now, that said, real fast, as I know people do need to leave. If you want to touch base with me after here, if I either couldn't answer your question, I said I'm going to look into it. If you want to ask me privately, you can jump to my Facebook page or Twitter, although I will tell you that Facebook is the better approach. I don't use Twitter nearly as often. I'm on Facebook every day. Okay, so if you go to Facebook, Train Signal Ed, that's where you can find me. Now, as far as getting in touch with Train Signal and Microsoft Learning, you can go to the Train Signal blog, you can go to Train Signal's Facebook page, Train Signal's Twitter page, And then as far as Microsoft goes, there's Born to Learn, where you'll get a lot of this information. There's stuff being posted every day where you can, keep up to date on this stuff for yourself. And then, of course, I mentioned this earlier, Microsoft.com/learning. Now let me pop back. There's just a few more questions. I'm going to answer them, and then we're going to call it a day. But you can always reach out to me outside of this webinar. Are there study materials available yet? Not from TrainSignal, although I told you at the beginning, I'm working on it. And I don't believe there is anything available even from Microsoft yet, but it's right around the corner. I do know there was an Introduction to Windows Server 2012 book that was given away at TechEd, and it is also available online. It was free at one point, or I think it was about $9 at Amazon. Okay, so you can get us started with that book, but it's really not. It's just going to get you introduced to the product. It's not really what I would call study material. And let's see, when will TrainSignal have training materials? I had mentioned at the beginning, don't ask me dates because I don't have them. They will be as soon as possible. I am working very hard to get the new product put in place with training material just as fast as I can do it for you. But I don't want to sacrifice the quality of that training just to get it out fast for you guys. 70-640 alone gives you an MCTS. Yes, that's true. I'm not sure, Dale, if you were answering that for somebody. I think somebody asked earlier what one exam would give them as far as with the new exams, and that's the one where we're not sure. Not having used 2012 yet, can you tell me how much different it is from 2008? A lot. Okay? From both an interface perspective, it has changed dramatically, and from a feature perspective, they have really introduced some cool stuff in Windows Server 2012. Another reason why it's going to take a little while for me to get it out there. If it was just a repeat of 2008, I'd have it done already. Okay, there is new stuff for sure. What would you suggest the best study path as far as asking should I do training videos? Well, Otis, I'll tell you what. Obviously, I am prejudiced working for TrainSignal, and that I think you should watch our videos. I truly take pride in what I do, and I want it to be the best training on the planet. I want it to be better than anything else you can do. That said, I will tell you I am a huge advocate of classroom learning. I don't think anything, even my videos, truly take the place of having an instructor in the room with you. But here's the reality. Most people these days don't have the means to go spend an entire week in a classroom, spend thousands of dollars to be in a classroom, and very often there's just not enough classes. You have to travel somewhere. So I usually recommend, that's why I joined now with TrainSignal, and that's why we're producing these videos for you guys. All right. Is it your opinion, how big of a deal is MCSE private cloud? I think it's going to be huge, and I plan on going for it. I don't have any certifications, but use 2003 and 2008 and exchange every day. Again, I would go about starting with 2008. That's where I would start. I would not start with 2003. I would start with 2008. And as far as how to go about studying, videos, and I will tell you, there's also a lot of good books out there. If cost is something you're trying to stay within a reasonable cost, there's a lot of good Microsoft Press books out there. And let's see here. One last question, then we're gonna wrap things up. Oh, Mitch, I wish I could share this. I don't know of a way to do it very easily. I can try one thing real fast. Let's see if it works. Let's see here. Okay, Mitch just threw a link up there for the for that book that I mentioned. Let me see if I can put this in here. Go to Microsoft.com. I apologize for the silence here. I'm just going to try to type this in, and hopefully I got it right. Okay, so I just typed it in a little notepad document here on the screen. So anyway, so that's the link. I'm sure you can go find it, though, if you want that intro book. Anyway, with that, thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thanks for sticking around. For those of you that are still left, I see we have most of you stuck around through all this Q&A. I hope to hear from you in the future. Come to my Facebook page, shoot me questions, and I always get answers. I always find answers one way or another. And other than that, I'm going to pass things back over to Lisa, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in my next webinar.